Memandangkan hari ini ialah, kalian semua tahu, hari ini ialah hari merdekanya Indonesia, National Day bagi Indonesia. Jadi bagi menghormati kemerdekaan Indonesia, kita akan sama-sama bangun dan nyanyikan lagu Indonesia, lagu kebangsaan Indonesia. Ya, sang. ちょっと待って。ちょっと。少々お待ちください。少々お待ちください。少々お待ちください。Indonesia Raya.
Indonesia Raya. Betul. Indonesia Raya.
Mana?
Serumput.
Di mana ya? Indonesia. Ada Raya. Ni. Okay. Dengar. Indonesia lahirku, padaku, di sanalah aku berdiri, jadi padu ibuku. Indonesia kebangsaanku, bangsa dan tanah airku. Marilah kita bersyukur, Indonesia bersatu. Aku hidup bangsaku, Malaysia. Merdeka, tanahku negeriku yang kucintai. Indonesia merdeka. Semoga negara Indonesia bertambah maju. Dan rakyatnya hidup harmoni. And then teruskan. And then seterusnya kita akan teruskan dengan briefing on Nusantara Cultural Showcase. Di mana pasal briefing ini kami akan
ucapan dulu sebelum briefing.
Okay. Di mana kita akan terangkan tentang history of Arabic influence Nusantara and then difference of culture in Nusantara. Sebelum kita masuk ke next slot, saya berjemput saudara Ikwan untuk berikan kata-kata. Ikwan San. San ke Ikwan?
Bukan San. Okay. Kita ngomong English boleh? Sebab takut ni Tapi tak apa, nanti baik. Ni sekadar ucapan opening saja daripada saya. Dan kemudian kita akan lihat we are show the video of how Islam come to Nusantara, and then what's different and similarities of Nusantara. Okay, so after we go far and far, so now I'm as a director of Nusantara Cultural Showcase, and with my co-partner to handle Nusantara Showcase, and we our jawatan kuasa. Dan so today I would like to speak about opening speech. Next slide. There, slide. Okay. So a very warm welcome to the Nusantara Cultural Showcase Malaysia and Indonesia edition. Today we today today we are delighted to share with you the rich heritage of Malaysia and Indonesia through the culture, music, dance, and culinary tradition. This showcase is not only about art and performance, but also about building the bridges of friendship between Saudi Asia and Japan. So we believe that by learning and appreciating each other's culture, we can strengthen our bonds of friendship and mutual respect. And then the lastly is thank you for joining us today, and we hope you will enjoy the program and bring home with beautiful memories. So I think that's all my speech. So now we continue to video from YouTube about Nusantara. Oh ya, sambil-sambil tu technical tengah ni mesti kalian ada tertanya-tanya apa Hikaru faham kan sikit-sikit? Okay, mesti kalian ada tertanya-tanya kenapa dalam tentative tersebut ada menyelitkan Arabic Cafe. Sebenarnya the point is bukanlah nak highlight, maksudnya bukan nak highlight, maksudnya kita nak inform dekat contoh macam Hikaru kan as a new person, and then kita nak inform bagaimana sebenarnya permulaan Islam tu datang hasil daripada pedagang Arab kan. Jadi maksudnya kita nak bagi tahu adanya elemen Arab dalam Nusantara tersendiri. Contohnya macam dari segi pemakaian kita kan, kadang kita menutup aurat apa semua tu. Jadi disebabkan itu kita nak bawa pendekatan budaya Arab sedikit sahaja. Dan kita untuk meraihkan kawan kita yang di belakang sebab beliau belajar tentang Arab. Jadi that's why kita relatekan dengan program tersebut. Dan insyaAllah kita juga akan menyelitkan, kalau kalian ada perasan, break session. Dalam break session tersebut, insyaAllah kita orang akan bawakan tentang buat teh tarik live in in jadi sini, and then mungkin akan dipresentkan oleh kita punya media, our chef about teh tarik. So hope you will enjoy the performance. Okay. So this alright.
Did you know that Malaysia and Indonesia may never have become Muslim if it wasn't for China? You see, while Malaysia and Indonesia are two separate countries today, in reality they inhabit a continent of thousands of islands, each with their own language and people and culture. And in the 700s, the dominant power in the region was Srivijaya, a Buddhist kingdom which built its empire on a foundation of trade by sea. Soon after, the traders of Srivijaya began noticing an ever-increasing presence of foreigners arriving by ship from the west. Muslim sailors from Somalia and India and Persia and Oman and Yemen were sailing the oceans in search of new peoples to trade with, and connecting all the lands in between. Within another 100 years, the Muslims would become the dominant traders in the region, and the Empire of Srivijaya saw them as a way to link their own internal spice trade with the rest of the world. Soon, Muslim merchants began settling along the northern and western coasts of Sumatra, the main island under Srivijayan control, and not long after, the first Muslim sultanates in the region would begin to appear. In the north of Sumatra were a cluster of small kingdoms that Srivijaya was never able to fully dominate. And one of those kingdoms was based in the city of Perlak, on the northeastern coast in modern-day Aceh. At some point in the mid-800s, the rulers of Perlak accepted Islam, marking the beginning of the very first sultanate in the region. But it would take another 400 years before the rulers of another kingdom embraced Islam. In the late 900s, Srivijaya began making gains along the north coast of Sumatra, invading the small kingdoms there and bringing them under its control. Soon, Perlak too found itself at war, struggling to remain independent from the empire. However, the Srivijayan occupation of the Perlak Sultanate didn't last long, as in 1025, a new empire began its own campaign. The Chola Empire of southern India launched an invasion of Srivijaya, attacking its capital city and imprisoning its king. Now leaderless, Srivijaya descended into chaos and confusion, allowing for the local kingdoms to slowly regain their autonomy in the region once more. For the next 300 years, northern Sumatra remained divided between the local kingdoms, and throughout this time, Muslim traders and Muslim locals continued to spread Islam amongst the people. Soon, Muslim traders began traveling beyond Sumatra, arriving in the Maluku Islands in eastern Java and the Malay Peninsula as well. And it was then that a second Muslim kingdom took shape in 1136, when the king of Qadeh accepted Islam, taking the name Muzaffar Shah and founding the Qadeh Sultanate. Muslims continued giving da'wah throughout the region, but the process remained slow and efforts were limited to a grassroots level. But soon all that changed when a small yet extremely important event occurred, beginning a tidal wave of new sultanates to come. In 1267, the 17th Sultan of Perlak offered his daughter's hand in marriage to the king of the neighboring kingdom of Pasai. Seeing the marriage proposal as an offer of friendship and accepting the Perlak Sultan's religion of Islam, the king of Pasai became Muslim, married the Sultan's daughter, and changed his name from Marasilu to Malikus Saleh. The third Sultanate had just been founded, and soon others would arrive. Together, the two kingdoms began focusing their efforts on spreading Islam to other parts of Southeast Asia. Islamic scholars and da'is were hosted and sent to the nearby kingdoms across the Strait of Malacca to spread Islam in the neighboring peninsula. Muslim traders had been coming to the Malay archipelago for centuries now, but there were now sultans directly involved in the da'wah. Finally, it seemed like progress was being made. Sultans would meet with each other and form alliances with each other and spread news of Islam amongst each other. And if the rulers of neighboring kingdoms converted, their people too would surely follow. But soon that sense of hope quickly diminished when the rumblings of a new great empire began to emerge. In 1288, the Hindu kingdom of Singhasari in eastern Java sent an army to southern Sumatra. There, they managed to defeat the Malayu kingdom and take control over the domain. The sudden rise of the Singhasari even gained the attention of the Mongols in China, and the grandson of Genghis Khan sent envoys to the rulers demanding that they submit. The king of Singhasari refused to pay tribute, and in 1293 the Mongols began their invasion, sending an army to Java. The war was short-lived, and in a surprising turn of events, Singhasari was actually able to defend itself. The mighty Mongol Empire that had conquered the entirety of China could not even take control of the island of Java. Within a year, the Mongols had been defeated in battle and were forced to retreat. Now it became clear that Singhasari was in charge, and they soon extended their kingdom to Sumatra and the Malay Peninsula, uniting the lands under the most powerful empire the region ever seen. Soon, even the Muslim sultanates in Kedah, Perlak, and Samudra Pasai were under the empire's control, and it seemed like Hinduism would remain the dominant religion in the region. But the Muslims never gave up, and the conversion of just one man to Islam would ultimately lead to the downfall of the newly formed Majapahit Empire. You see, in 1398, the Majapahit Empire besieged Singapura, a Buddhist kingdom that had gained power through strong ties to the Mongols ruling China. But by now, the Mongols had lost power in China, and with the help of powerful Muslim generals and bureaucrats in the country, a new Chinese empire had risen. With no chance to challenge the Majapahit Empire and their Mongol allies long gone, the king of Singapore, Parameswara, and his followers were forced to leave, resettling in modern-day Malacca. Soon they began building a new kingdom along the western coast of the Malay Peninsula, and that's when the sultans of Perak and Samudera Pasai reached out to them. Seeing the Majapahit Empire as a mutual enemy and wanting to make an alliance with the new Malaccan kingdom, the Sultan of Samudera Pasai offered his daughter's hand in marriage to Parameswara in the same way that the Sultan of Perak had done nearly 150 years earlier. Parameswara accepted the proposal, converting to Islam in 1414 and changed his name to Megat Iskandar Shah and founded the Sultanate of Malacca. Around the same time, Zheng He, a Muslim naval commander and undisputedly the greatest Chinese sailor to have ever lived, had begun a series of voyages under the authority of the new Chinese Empire. One of his first stops was in Malacca, where the Chinese declared their support to Iskandar Shah and the Malacca Sultanate. Over the next few decades, Zheng He's Chinese fleet arrived in Java, creating alliances with local rulers and intervening in the politics of the Majapahit Empire. Zheng He also began his own project, spreading Islam in the region. He brought Islamic scholars from China and settled Chinese, Malay, Indian, and Arab Muslims along the northern coast of Java, creating settlements that would eventually become trading hubs with their own power and influence. Islam was now spreading within the island of Java, and there's even evidence to show that people within the Majapahit ruling class were accepting Islam too. And while this was happening in Java, the Malacca Sultanate was making its own moves as well, expanding throughout both the Malay Peninsula and also into the Majapahit territories in Sumatra. It was clear that the Majapahit Empire was losing influence and land, and that the Muslims were now gaining the upper hand. In the mid-1400s and throughout the 1500s, new Muslim sultanates began to appear. In 1457, the Sultan of Patani was formed, followed by the Sultanates of Tidore, Jailolo, and Bachan in the 1460s. In 1470, the Pahang Sultanate was founded, and in 1475, the Demak Sultanate split off from the Majapahit Empire, gaining independence. By 1486, Ternate had its first sultan, and then in 1496, the Aceh Sultanate was born. Aceh then began expanding throughout northern Sumatra in the 1520s, while at the same time Demak crushed an attacking Majapahit army, causing the complete collapse of the empire in 1527. The Sultanate of Banjar was founded the year before, and then Kalinyamat and Banten in 1527, and then Johor in 1528, and then Cirebon in 1547, and then Pajang in 1568, and then finally the greatest Islamic kingdom in Java, the Mataram Sultanate, was created in 1586. By now, Islam had spread throughout the Malay archipelago, and all of the major islands had sultanates ruling over the land. And with the ruling classes now Muslim, most of their people began adopting Islam as their religion too. The spread of Islam in Malaysia and Indonesia was initially very slow, with it taking centuries of dawah before even the first sultanates appeared. And even then, Islam only really spread in great numbers in the 1400s during the collapse of the last great Hindu empire. Even still, till this day, there are many places in the region that have not yet accepted Islam, and it may still take them a few centuries more. But because of the efforts of the Muslims of Somalia and Oman and Yemen and Persia and India and China, and of course the Malaysian and Indonesian Muslims as well, these two countries form one of the largest regions in the Muslim world, and perhaps one of the most important regions as well. Like and subscribe for more Muslim facts.
Satu lagi, apa kalau macam aku tanya cakap pasal batu surat ke apa kan, batu surat ke apa, nanti tunjuklah gambar. Okay, so alhamdulillah we are finished about that. So I want to make some conclusion. English, okay, because my English not good, but I try my best to talk in English. Actually from the conclusion in the YouTube, actually they talk about perlak in Indonesia and then go to Pasai and then like that. because in Pasai is one of place the spread the Islam in Indonesia. So in 1395 Masihi in Sulawesi, if mistaken. So in record of China, they find Islam in Jawa in 1418, and then in a Portuguese record, they find the Islam in 1498 in Jawa. So that's how the Islam spread in Indonesia. And then in Malaysia, if you know, the first actually we have a curry puff is I think, do you know about traditional Malaysia, the kuih curry puff? Kuih curry puff. So I think you should try the food because it's so delicious. Okay, so we continue. Actually, about Malaysia. About Malaysia, the first place Islam is spread in Melaka. Do you know Melaka? Melaka. You know about Parameswara. You know, history of Melaka. So Melaka is a place, the first how Islam is coming. Because then after that, from Melaka and going to Islam going to Johor. Sorry, Islam going to Selangor. Do you know Selangor? Selangor, the part of Malaysia Peninsula. So and then after Selangor, go to Johor, and then go to Pahang, Terengganu, Kelantan. So far in Terengganu, we have history about Batu Bersurat. Do you know Batu Bersurat? Do you know? Maybe you can Batu Bersurat. Maybe Hikaru can know about Batu Bersurat. Because from Batu Bersurat is a proof how Arabic come to Terengganu. So they live the history. So this Batu Bersurat can Batu stone, stone post. Oh no, bersurat, ya, Batu Bersurat. Suruti lettering strong. Story strong. Itu. So can the besarkan sikit. Hikaru, no? Besar, biggest. Bigger. Okay, so this Batu Bersurat. Lettering. One of Batu Bersurat. So if you see in the Batu Bersurat have a Arabic Jawi, tulisan Jawi. So this word Rasulullah ni. These are our prophet. So this history how Islam come to Malaysia. Okay. And then back. Okay. So back. Okay. So this one of proof how Islam come to Malaysia. So actually, if you see this book is from UniSZA, and then UniSZA is in Terengganu. So Terengganu is about Batu Bersurat, lettering stone. Macam tu. So actually, UniSZA one of university in Terengganu, local. So feel free to come to UniSZA. Okay. So I think that's all from me about how Islam come to Terengganu, because that's why in tentative we show that Arabic cafe because it's relate to Nusantara. Because Nusantara is too much, if not mistaken, because Nusantara have Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, maybe Singapore. So that's our Nusantara Nusantara group. So in this today, just only Malaysia and Indonesia edition only. Because if we are talk about many Nusantara, maybe it's not one day, maybe it's take 2 or 3 days. It's too much.
Singapura, Brunei juga
Brunei.
termasuk Nusantara.
Ya, ya.
Nama ibu kota Indonesia baru ya.
Yes, baru.
Ibu kota
Di mungkin yang Indonesia di Indonesia. Ibu kota yang baru. Nusantara Raya. Nusantara Raya. Kalimantan, ya, Kalimantan is new. So actually, for Hikaru and maybe Japanese information, I think Indonesian know, because in Indonesian we have Padang, orang Padang. Orang Padang is similar with my country, Negeri Sembilan. State, our state. Sorry. Our state, Negeri Sembilan. Because in Negeri Sembilan, it's like brotherhood with orang Padang. Because maybe can show the flags. Flags pula. Flag. Bendera. Hikaru, you know flag? Bendera. Ya, kibar. Yeah, that's right. Bendera. This my state is Negeri Sembilan, so is same. Boleh tunjuk yang Padang punya. Simin Padang. Bendera Padang. So you can similarity with our country. So boleh tunjuk rumah Minangkabau. Okay. Okay, cuba saja. Okay, so this house boleh saja. Minangkabau. Okay, contoh mata. This house is we call rumah ayah. I think Indonesia no. Rumah Minangkabau. Because this is like apa tu kerbau? Buffalo. Buffalo stones. Horn. So this house actually in my state have. So that's why traditional house. Actually I have been come to Padang. We are going to Padang, and then he know about Negeri Sembilan. So I think it's like sibling. So akrab. You know akrab is rapat apa? Close. So the Negeri Sembilan and Padang is close. Close friend. That's right. There's a side sampingan sahaja. Okay. So we crowd. So now I think we continue with Arif, your video.
思いがけないひらめきをビジネスに。WIX ならどんなアイデアも形にできる。
ago. They also share the island of Borneo, along with Brunei. Indonesia. Today we're going to talk about 7 ways that Today we're going to talk about 7 ways that Indonesia and Malaysia are different from each other. Indonesia and Malaysia are 2 countries that have a lot in common. They're both located in maritime Southeast Asia, also known as the Malay Archipelago. The Malay language has historically served as a lingua franca throughout both areas, and large parts of both countries were ruled by the same empires in the past, the Sriwijaya Empire and the Majapahit Empire. The people of both countries use the historical name Nusantara to refer to the archipelago. They also share the island of Borneo, along with Brunei. But as the title of the video suggests, there are numerous differences between the 2 countries. Number 1. Indonesia has a much bigger population, an estimated 277 million people as of 2022, while Malaysia's population is around 34 million people. That means that Indonesia's population is more than 8 times greater than Malaysia's. Indonesia is the 4th most populous country in the world, after China, India, and the United States. Malaysia is the 44th most populous country, give or take 1 or 2 places, depending on the exact measurement used. Number 2. Indonesia is much larger. Indonesia's larger population isn't so surprising considering the country's larger size. Indonesia has a total area of 1,904,569 square kilometers, while Malaysia has a total area of 329,847 square kilometers. That makes Indonesia about 5.8 times the size of Malaysia. But Indonesia also spans a huge area because of the space between its major islands. From east to west, it spans 5,150 kilometers, making it big enough to span the entire continental United States. And then some. Compare that to Malaysia. Number 3. Economy. Indonesia has a much bigger economy than Malaysia. In 2020, its GDP was roughly $1,058 billion. In the same year, Malaysia's GDP was about $337 billion. That means that Indonesia's GDP is 3.14 times the size of Malaysia's. But remember that Indonesia has a much larger population than Malaysia, so Malaysia's GDP per capita is higher. It was $10,412 in 2020, while Indonesia's was $3,869. That makes Malaysia's GDP per capita 2.69 times higher than Indonesia's. This is an oversimplification, but that basically means that Malaysia has a higher standard of living, at least in terms of material wealth. Number 4. Colonial history. Both are former colonies, but Malaysia is a former British colony, while Indonesia is a former Dutch colony. Beginning in the 17th century, both the Dutch and the British were establishing forts and trade posts in the Malay Peninsula and archipelago. To settle disputes over which country controlled certain areas, they signed the Anglo-Dutch Treaty of 1824, in which they decided the boundaries of which areas the British would control and which areas the Dutch would control. This treaty between the 2 colonial powers determined the current borders between Indonesia and Malaysia. If there had been no treaty and all of the land became a colony of just one of those countries, then Indonesia and Malaysia might have been a single country today. Being former colonies of different colonial powers is a factor in several other differences between Indonesia and Malaysia. Number 5. They have different national languages. Kind of. Both Bahasa Malaysia and Bahasa Indonesia are based on Malay, but they have diverged somewhat over the past 100 years or so and are now somewhat different, in particular in their vocabulary. In Malaysia, there are more English loanwords, and in Indonesian, there are more Dutch loanwords, as well as loans from regional languages of Indonesia, such as Javanese. So, for example, the word for bag in Indonesian is tas, which comes from Dutch, and in the Malaysian version of Malay, it's beg, which comes from English. Another difference is that Malaysians often don't speak Malay on its own. They mix it with lots of English words, and some words from other languages like Hokkien Chinese. These aren't really loanwords, they're not part of standard written Malay, but rather people code switch in an improvised manner. Something similar happens with Indonesian, but the code switching is normally between Indonesian and regional languages like Javanese, Sundanese, and so on. But Chinese has also influenced some varieties of informal Indonesian. There are many more speakers of Hokkien or other varieties of Chinese in Malaysia than there are in Indonesia, because 6. The racial, cultural, and religious demographics of Malaysia and Indonesia are very different. In Malaysia, 69.4% of the population are Bumiputra, Malays and other ethnic groups who are native to the country. 23.2% are Chinese Malaysians, and 6.7% are Indian Malaysians, mainly of Tamil background. These are the numbers as of 2020. Chinese and Indian Malaysians in large part descend from laborers who were brought there by the British during colonial rule. In Indonesia, about 95% of the population are Pribumi, native Indonesians, and official statistics state that only 1.2% of Indonesians identify as Chinese. The number of people with Chinese roots is definitely higher, but in Indonesia they have been more assimilated than the Chinese in Malaysia. In Malaysia, minorities are less assimilated, and the different ethnic groups have different cultural identities, different school systems taught in their respective languages, and political platforms represent the interests of specific ethnic groups, and so on. In Indonesia, this is not the case. There's mainly just one Indonesian school system, and while there are different regional identities and different ethnic groups, only one national identity is accepted: Indonesian. From 1966 until 2001, Chinese language and cultural celebrations in public were actually banned, which led to a high level of assimilation. There are also different religious demographics. In Malaysia, 63.2% of the population is Muslim, 18.7% is Christian, 9.2% is Hindu, and 6.1% are other. Those statistics come from the Malaysian government. In Indonesia, 86.7% of the population is Muslim, 10.7% is Christian, including Catholic, which is actually a separate category in Indonesian statistics, 1.74% is Hindu, and 0.77% is Buddhist. But anecdotally, I've heard various descriptions of Malaysian Muslims as being more conservative and a higher percentage of them being devout Muslims. Indonesian Muslims tend to be more liberal, and a higher percentage of them are nominal Muslims. But this is just what I hear from Indonesians and Malaysians. Number 7, the legal system. There's a dual legal system in Malaysia, with civil and criminal law, but also Islamic Sharia law being implemented to a limited degree at the state level. Sharia law applies only to Muslims and is applied for family matters such as marriage and religious observance. The punishments which can be given out by the Sharia court are limited to 3 years in prison, fines of up to 5,000 ringgits, and 6 lashes with a cane. Indonesia does not have Sharia law except in one province, Aceh, on the island of Sumatra, where it's applied much more fully and strictly than anywhere in Malaysia, and applies to non-Muslims as well, at least for things that are not covered under the National Criminal Code. The right to implement Sharia law was granted to Aceh as a special autonomous province as part of the peace process with the pro-independence Free Aceh movement. In the rest of Indonesia, secular law applies. Well, it's not 100% secular, as there are explicit references to God and religious values in the country's constitution, but that's meant to reflect the various religions of Indonesia, not only Islam. And Indonesia's current criminal code dates back to the Dutch colonial period. The Pew Research Center conducted a survey in 2015 that showed fewer Indonesians than Malaysians want their country's laws to strictly follow the teachings of the Quran. In Malaysia, 52% of the population said that the law should strictly follow the Quran, while in Indonesia, only 22% said that the law should strictly follow the Quran. Much of Indonesia's population does not want limits placed on its civil liberties. In 2019, the Indonesian government tried to pass a bill that would change the criminal code from the current Dutch one to an Indonesian one. A large portion of the Indonesian population rejected certain articles that criminalized behaviors like sex outside of marriage and insulting the president, so the bill was delayed. To be clear, that new law would not be Sharia law, but it would limit civil liberties, and many Indonesians don't want that. Malaysians, especially those of Malay background, tend to emphasize the things that Malaysia and Indonesia have in common, while Indonesians are more likely to emphasize that they are different and distinct from Malaysia. Maybe that's another difference, so I guess there are 8, not 7. But despite all these differences, and despite Indonesians and Malaysians' tendency to argue on social media, just like everyone else, they still share many historical, cultural, and linguistic connections that make them sibling countries. If you're from Indonesia or Malaysia, do you agree with the differences mentioned in this video? Are there any other differences you'd like to mention? If you'd like to support this channel and see videos 1 week early, click the join button next to the subscribe button to find out how you can become a channel
Di Indonesia tinggal ya.
Tinggal ya. Benar. Sedikit berbeda.
フィリピンの首都マニラに別邸を持とう。月々での分割払いが可能。フィリピン首都マニラのラグジュアリー物件。
Hai, Assalamualaikum. Hari ni saya nak buat kari pap kentang yang